Hi everybody, Anton from Next Place here. It's Friday at 7 o'clock ish, and here I am to answer your property related questions. Thanks to everybody for sending the questions in. Don't forget you can send them in to me, Anton at next-place.co.uk. You can message us via all the platforms, you can WhatsApp us from our Facebook page, and so on and so on. But hopefully I'm providing you with a platform to be able to get those questions answered that you want answering, basically. It was nice that I got stopped while I was walking my dog the other day in Wilnecote. Someone actually doubled back and said, thank you for doing the lives, I've actually learned something, so that's interesting, thanks Andrew. Hopefully I've also had a couple of questions from my friends as well, which is a random one. But tonight is going to be about landlords and tenants. So I have, as I've been asked some questions, but I feel like I'm going to be having a bit of a chat with myself today, because some of the questions that I've been asked from tenants and landlords have sort of been answered when I've been on some property inspections this week. So I went out with a prospective new landlord to some of their properties, just asking for my advice, and some of the things that came out of that were super interesting. So yeah, thanks for watching. Just for those of you that have just joined us, then it's we're just going to be talking about landlords and tenants. So if you're a landlord or a tenant, or you know someone that is, and you might have missed the first half, or you switch off because I'm that boring, oh yeah, I forgot to be animated again, then please share it with them and ask them to give it a watch. So one question that got that asked to me was, can you still make money as a landlord with mortgage prices still going up? The answer is obviously yes. It does depend on how much deposit you put down, how much rent you charge, and so on and so on. But the answer is yes. So if you bought a £150,000 property, your total investment with that, with stamp duty, solicitor's fees, and so on, would be about £45,000. If you rented it for £775, which is definitely possible if you're looking to buy a property in or an ex-local authority property in Belgrave or Stonydelph or Leafields or wherever it may be, you rent that out for £775, and after fees that could be a 6.5% net return on the money that you've invested. So that £45,000 that you've got, you could get a 6.5% return on that. Now that's the top savings account that I just looked at on the Martin Lewis website, was 4.5 with Vanquis Bank. So that's nearly a 50% better return. Plus as well, you're getting the capital growth on the property. So you're getting a double whammy there. So you're actually getting a better return on your money in a property than you are sat in the bank or sat in the top savings account, which is taking top savings account that's tie your money up for a long time. So property's going to tie your money up for a while. So very, very similar. However, all those things, so the return that you get on the property, there are some things that do depend on the landlord and the tenant. So there is a common misconception out there from tenants generally that landlords are loaded. Some possibly may be, depends when they bought the property, but most landlords will remortgage their property up to 75% loan to value to pull some cash out to buy another one. So I just want to put that in perspective. So what I just mentioned then about getting a 6.5% return on your money, that probably amounts to, on that 775, about £250 a month. That's after your mortgage, which is 400 and odd, paying your agent and so on and so on. So £250 is the profit that they're going to make. Out of that £250, they've got to pay 20 to 40% tax. They've got to fix any problems that are wrong with the property, or if a tenant logs a job, they've got to fix the property out of that. So actually, in reality, they're not going to be millionaires, and some months they may lose money. But it does depend on both the landlord and the tenant. So this is where all the things that I want to talk to you about come in. So if you've just joined us again, this is about landlords and tenants, and can you make money on a property, and talking about the questions I've been asked by landlords and tenants. So I've been with some prospective new landlords this week. So I've sort of written down on my pad here the things that I want to talk about, so that I don't bumble on too much. I'm conscious that we're nearly at 5 minutes. So I've been with a prospective new landlord and visited some of their properties. I've also met some of their tenants, and interestingly, they are self-managing. So you can make a little bit more money self-managing, but it might be a double-edged sword. So and I've had this. This is a really common question or really common statement from landlords: is that my tenant's great, they've been in there years, they get really cheap rent. A lot of them don't inspect and so on and so on, but cheap rent actually isn't doing anybody any favours. So what we're seeing at the moment is people that have been in places for a long time that have got really cheap rents. That's great for the tenants. However, if they want to move somewhere because they've got a new job, they've got a new partner or whatever it may be, then the cheap rent isn't going to do them any favours because they've got to go somewhere else and pay market rent. So I've spoken to a landlord last week that rents a 3-bed property at £650 a month, or 600 it was actually. We rented the same house around the corner for 950. Now that's market demand. So we had 20 viewings on that property. It's market demand that's driving that. That's not the agent that's driving it. And it's the same with any sales property. It's worth what someone's prepared to pay. So if a tenant has got a really nice property, they're going to pay more for it. If you've got a property that needs loads of work or isn't in great condition, the likelihood is you're going to get less applicants and less money for it. That's just how it is. So it's a bit of a vicious circle. And if landlords don't keep on top of their looking after their property, and then it's gradually going to get worse. So this particular landlord that I've been out, again, I'm not mentioning any names obviously, but this was some of the findings that I found. So I had one tenant that had been in there for 14 years and that was actually paying 50% of the market value of the rent. One of their other ones was about 50%, but they'd never put the rent up in 8 years because their partner passed away and they felt sorry for them, although she was a doctor. So rents have never increased, tenants have been there years, they don't inspect. When I went into one particular property, there was mould everywhere because I hadn't been in. They're right at the top of the stairs, so it was you go in the ground floor and you walk up to the stairs to the actual apartment. There was holes in the top of the carpet, trip hazard that somebody could just go down the stairs and break their neck potentially. So that was a massive issue that they'd never looked at. The house wasn't in great condition either. The tenants hadn't been looking after it that well. But then if the landlord's not doing any work, then why should the tenant be bothered to look after it? And there was also electric wall heaters that were covered up. So if they came on, then there's a potential fire. So there is a lot of this that there's a landlord and tenant sync that needs to go on. So tenants need to understand that just because they're a tenant and they pay rent doesn't mean to say that they get silver service just because they're a tenant. So if you've got a problem, you can't expect a landlord to fix it bang like that because they've got to pay for that. You've also got to take some responsibility. The classic one that we get a lot, my light bulb's gone, okay, change it. You live there, you've got to deal with some of the maintenance things, just look after your own property. And if there are problems like there's a hole in the carpet at the top of the stairs and you need to report that to either your landlord or your agency. There's also a big thing with deposits. So we've had one tenant that's behind on their rent at the minute. They just said, can you take it out of the deposit? Unfortunately, the deposit's there for dilapidations at the end of the tenancy, not as a substitute for rent. So there's loads of things that tenants need to be more aware of their responsibilities in looking after the property. Some landlords need to be more aware of their responsibilities and actually go and inspect the property, make sure the tenant's all right, make sure they're paying market rent. I'm not saying overcharge them, but just make sure they're paying market rent, because if the mortgage rates go up, which they obviously have done, then you're going to be paying more for your mortgage. We had one landlord that tried to that needed to remortgage their property, and because of all the new stress tests that they bought in, meant that the rent will need to go up £300 a month. So there's lots of things that everybody needs to be aware of in the landlord and the tenant community. I'm conscious that I'm rambling on, and if you have joined us now, I've been talking about can you make money out of property still being a landlord, and what part tenants play in that. So all I'm saying is that if you're a landlord, look after your house, look after your tenant, charge market rent, be regular in putting them up, because then it keeps the tenant in touch with reality that if they ever need to move. If you're a tenant, you need to work with your landlord or your agency that if there are some problems at the property, then work to resolve them. They're not all necessarily going to get resolved because you want them to. The landlord might not be able to afford it. And bear in mind, one of the big things is that, bear in mind, the landlord does still have a mortgage. That tenants, if you had a mortgage and you didn't pay it, it wouldn't be, oh, okay, no problem, take out my deposit. Then that starts to affect your credit rating. So please bear that in mind for landlords. So I'm aware I've rambled on. The upshot is, if you're a landlord, yes, you can make money out of a property on a monthly basis and out of capital growth. You need to charge market rent. Tenants, if you're a tenant, then you need to be on top of your maintenance, you looking after stuff as well as helping the landlord to get to look after the stuff. Again, if you're a landlord, make sure you go and inspect your property regularly. If you don't use an agent to do it, don't just leave it to the tenant just to make sure it's okay. If it's people live differently, so you can't just because you live a certain way doesn't mean say they have to live a different way or your way. But it just needs to make sure that they're looking after the property, because if they don't look after the property, then it gets into disrepair. It can end up costing more and more money. So there have been a lot of questions in there from landlords and tenants actually, and I know I haven't said the question and then responded to it, but hopefully me talking to myself or to the camera, it might have answered some of the questions that you have. If you do want to have a bit more of an in-depth chat about anything, whether you are a tenant or a landlord, then all you need to do is just give me a call. As I get in touch at the start of the video, I'll do as much as I can to help. This is a completely impartial response. So if you're a landlord of somebody else, or you're a tenant of somebody else, or you're a buyer or seller, it don't make any difference. Just ask me the question. I'll do my best to answer it. I'm sorry to have taken up 11 or 12 minutes of your time this evening, but if I can help, please get in touch, and see you soon. If you're an Arsenal or Man City fan, hope you enjoyed the match, and look forward to seeing you again next week, when we'll also have a market wrap video from James. Cheers and speak soon. Take care.